Hey everyone, welcome to Journey to the Cloud version 4. This is our 4th live event. We are hosting on LinkedIn as well as several other platforms. We have a whole group of folks to present today. Welcome to those joining us on either Facebook or LinkedIn, YouTube, other platforms today. My name is Dan Ray, and I am a recent Microsoft MVP, as well as a longtime technical trainer. And we should probably start with a round of introductions. We have a lot of people that have not been on our streams before. Solomon, can I start with you for an introduction?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you, Daniel. So, my name is Solomon Jeremiah. I am a Microsoft certified trainer, and also I am Microsoft 365 certified enterprise administrator expert. I also have a Microsoft certified Microsoft Azure solution architect expert. So I've been working on Microsoft Cloud for some years now, and I've also been training people around the whole solution. So, and I'm currently located in Nigeria.
Excellent, excellent. Joseph, would you mind going next?
Yeah, sorry. Joseph Barnett, I'm founder of Project Veteran House. I'm also CEO and owner of JAB Cloud Solutions, MCT for, certified Microsoft Teams. Nice to meet everybody and looking forward to learning.
Thank you. And then Marcel, you're one of our speakers as well.
Hi there, good evening. My name's Marcel. First of all, thanks for having me tonight, Dan and team. It's been nice to see everyone's talks and also be presenting here tonight. So yeah, my name's Marcel. I'm also, like Dan, a recent Microsoft MVP in developer technologies. And my talks, I've been working in the IT industry for about 20 years, maybe more now. And I'm currently a DevOps architect manager working at Avanade. And I'm looking forward to learning some new stuff here and also sharing some great knowledge with the community. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Welcome.
Thank you.
Dwayne, are you available to do a quick introduction?
Sure. My name's Dwayne Hyatt. I'm a systems administrator down in Florida at a University of Florida. Do a lot of community building and champion programs for modern workplace for our faculty and staff that span the entire state, doing education to all the citizens of Florida. It's great to be here.
Excellent. Welcome. Thank you for coming. Raquel, welcome.
Hi. Hi, I'm Raquel. I do a lot of live streaming for various cloud topics, Microsoft topics. My father is also a Microsoft MVP, so I do a lot of stuff for his show, The Cloud Talk. So I've just a lot of experience with live streaming.
Excellent. Welcome. Arindam?
Yeah, so myself, Arindam Mitra, and I'm basically from India, but I'm working in Switzerland. Overall of 18 years of experience. And I've mostly worked in Zurich, I've worked in Hungary, I've worked in US, I've worked in Dubai, Kuwait. So I got a various opportunity to work internationally. I moved into cloud almost 5 years back, started with AWS, and then I moved to Azure. Right now, I'm the Azure lead and also the specialist architect. I'm basically responsible for all automation, build, run architecture. And I have recently started contributing a lot to community, thanks to my friend Marcel, who has been pushing me a lot. We've been working together for almost like a year, and then he was pushing me for that, to contribute more and more, and then I started doing that.
Excellent. I know Frank and Matthew are from Ireland. So in Ireland, unlike the US, it is a different time zone. Marcel and Arindam, I'm sure you can relate to that. What time is it there, Arindam?
It's now 9:11 exactly. So like I'm 1 hour ahead of I think the British time zone.
Okay.
Yeah, 8 o'clock for me to 8 p.m. Just gone 8 p.m. I guess is it Dwayne? You probably have some really, really nice weather out there in Florida at the moment.
It's just hot. It's just hot.
That's nice.
It cannot be Dwayne. It cannot be hotter than India.
Maybe not. Yeah, I don't know.
I chat with my parents, and they said that I don't have to come down to India at this point of time. It's so hot. It's really hot.
And Solomon, what time and weather do you have this evening?
Okay, I think my time zone is the same. So it is 8:12 p.m. over here. So
Okay.
that's GMT +1.
Oh,
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I believe we had a plan of order here with Solomon going first and then Marcel and Arindam.
Sure.
Okay.
So Solomon, there's your slides.
Okay. So thank you once again for giving me this opportunity to speak in this event. So I already introduced myself. My name is Solomon Jeremiah, Microsoft Certified Trainer. So today I would be speaking about assigning groups to Azure AD roles with Azure Privilege Identity Management. So like we all know, recently, a lot of organizations, they've been migrating their infrastructure to cloud. And as a result of this, in most organizations where we have a lot of users, they tend to give these privilege roles to users. And then when these privilege roles are being given to users, it also tend to increase your the security attacks on your cloud system, because you have a lot of people that have these roles and being active, and once their account is being compromised, the attacker tends to have a lot of access to the resources in your tenant. But the PIM solution is trying to solve a problem where these users, they do not have this roles active at all time. So they tend to elevate themselves to this role when they need it and for the specific time in which they need this role. So for my slide, you will see I gave a definition of what privilege identity management is all about. And from here, you will see the privilege identity management team is a service in Azure Active Directory that enables you to manage, control, and monitor access to important resources in your organization. So I also gave another definition, which is the PIM provides a time-based and approval based role activation to mitigate the risks of excessive, unnecessary, or misuse access permission to important resources. So these resources, they include the Azure Active Directory, the Azure Microsoft Online Services, such as Office 365 and Intune. So after giving you this, because my goal today is to explain how you can assign this PIM to an Azure group, security group. So which I would do a walkthrough, and I'm also going to try to conserve my time because I don't have a lot of time to speak on this. So the next thing I'll be explaining about PIM is some of the key features that PIM has. So like I said earlier, it provides just-in-time privilege to access resources and directories. So when a user is being given this privilege role, they they elevate themselves when they need it. It is not just active on their account. And I would also check while I'm going through the features, I'll also explain some other stuff, why they don't really need to have this role active and why it is important that they elevate themselves when they need these roles in their account. So now when you see the next feature, it is time bound. That means if a user tend to elevate their role to the privilege role that has been assigned to them, they have a time bound in which they can work with that role. So for example, you have an organization that probably have the compliance team, we have the help desk. When we have this time bound access, if maybe your work, we have a help desk group, and then we know creating a new user is not going to, or new users are not going to take like a lot of time. You can then send the amount of time you need to work or create new users or do whatsoever you want to do. And once you're done, that role will be taken off you. So that's where we have the time bound. So, but for somebody that is going to be working as a compliance, maybe you have to do a mail, you're trying to go through a mail content search. Yes, the right one is content search. So, it depends on the content of the mailbox. So, the time somebody that is probably going to be using to do a content search would probably be more than somebody that is just creating accounts. So, that's where the assign time bound access to resources comes in. So, you can assign a particular time, and once that time is up, the role will be taken away from that user. Then it require approval to activate privilege roles. So when you give a user this privilege role, you can always turn on, or you can always add a user to the group that would be approving this role anytime another user that is trying to elevate their role tends to activate it. So anytime they try to activate it, there's always somebody that have the permission to approve their role. So PIM also has this feature. So we also have the MFA. So MFA is, so if maybe somebody is attacking or one of the users that have this privilege role assigned to them, their information is being their credentials is compromised, the attacker would not have access to this privilege role, because one, for them to activate that privilege role, they need to enable MFA on their account. But something also you should also note in the PIM is that if, for example, you have a tenant and your tenant is already MFA enabled, and you want to activate your privilege identity, that's your privilege role, you do not need to, it would not prompt you for the MFA because it's already enabled in your tenant. So we also have the justification. So when we're talking about justification, it can be used for audit purpose. So for a user to elevate their role, they have to give a reason why they are actually why they want to use that role at that particular time. So when they are doing this justification, it can also be used for audit purpose. So we also have notifications. So notifications in sense that if maybe you have an organization that have a shared mailbox, and probably the IT department, they have a shared mailbox. Each time anybody goes to activate their role, you can also connect that shared mailbox so that people in that department can always get notification at a particular time that this particular person elevated their role. So we also have access review. You can always review the roles to know if maybe a particular person still needs it, or you need to extend the time. And we also have audit history for internal and external audits. So that's the features we have in PIM. So another thing I'll be talking about today is what can you manage in PIM. So we have the Azure AD roles, sometimes refers to as directory roles. Azure AD roles includes the built-in and custom roles to manage Azure AD and Microsoft Online Services. We also have Azure roles, the role-based access control role in Azure that grants access to management groups, subscription groups, and resources. So we also have the privilege access group also to set up just in time to members and owner role and Azure security group. So I think I already explained all this while I was saying in the previous slide. So these are what you can actually manage when we are talking about PIM. So now I the what I'll be talking about is you can assign the following to these roles or group. So users to get just-in-time access to Azure role, Azure AD roles, Azure roles, and privilege access group. We also have groups, anyone in a group to get just in time access to Azure AD roles and Azure roles. So that means if probably we want to use PIM, most times you can probably just assign PIM to a user, and anytime the user wants to elevate themselves, they go in there, activate the role, do what they want to do, follow the whole process, and they are gone. So we can also have a group whereby maybe we have a compliance team, or we have an external guest that's coming to work in our organization, and they need access to some resources. So we can also create a group and then add those external guests to the group and give them access, privileged access to those resources. Now, what PIM is also good. Most times when you give these roles to external guests, or you give it to a particular person, you might actually forget to take it off when their time is done. But with PIM, you can actually set a time frame. So if maybe the guest user is done, or they have a time frame they have to work with your organization, you don't need to manually go take the role away from them. So it will be taken off automatically. So the next thing I'll be talking about is types of assignments. So there are two types of assignments. We have the eligible and the active assignments. So if a user has been made eligible for a role, that means they can activate the role when they need to perform privileged tasks, which I already spoke about. So you can also set a start and end time for each type of assignment, which I also explained. So the addition gives you 4 possible types of assignments. So you can also give permanent eligible. So permanent eligible is you're making a user eligible to a particular role, but then they don't have a time frame. That means they just have this eligible role for as long as they are in that group. And we also have permanent active. So permanent active, they don't need to elevate to that role. We also have time bound eligible. We also have time bound active. So the next thing I'll be talking about is management capability for privilege access group. So in privilege identity management, you can now assign eligibility for membership or ownership of a privilege access group. You can assign Azure Active Directory built-in roles to cloud groups, and use PIM to manage group members and owner eligibility and activation. So we also have PIM supports the ability to enable privilege access on role assigned group, which I will just try to demonstrate very fast. So we also have bringing privilege access group, which is a preview into PIM identity. So the whole idea, like I explained, is you have to create a group when you want to bring in your PIM to it. You need to create a new group and turn on the assignable role. So if you don't turn on that in your security group, you won't be able to set the whole PIM on it. So from if you read through this slide, it's just explaining about how you can assign your PIM to your group when you create them in your Azure. So I'm trying to be fast also, so I can just do a walkthrough. So now the next slides are just like a walkthrough and the steps to it. So I will be sharing my screen. So as I'm sharing my screen, I'll just try as much as possible to also be fast. So I'll just give an example of what it looks like when you're creating these roles. So let me just share my screen immediately. So this is my screen now. I would be logging into my Azure Tenant. Okay, so I'm logging into my Azure tenant. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to create like random users very fast and then try to create a group and add them to the group. So I'll open another browser so you just see how you can assign the pimp to the group and also what it looks like when the user is trying to activate it on their own end. So while this is coming up, let me just open another browser and try to, so that I can just log in with the new user I'll be creating. So I don't know why this is taking time, but let me just try to refresh this. Okay, so I'll be going to my Active Directory. So let me just create a new user very fast. So I'll just create done. So I'll just create a password. So I'll just create this user now in my tenant. So let me just create a second user I'll be adding to the group. So let me just call this user. So I'm just trying to create random users. Let me give it a password. So I've created a new user. So now I will be logging in with one of the users I created right now. So let me just try to use the John. So now I will try to. So while this user is trying to sign in, let me just go back. So I'll create a new group now. So let me call this group IT support. So when I'm creating this group, I have to turn on the Azure role can be assigned to group. So when you turn this on, this is what one of the key things you need to note when you're creating the group. You have to turn on this, and then I'll be adding owner. So why I would always advise you should add owner so that you can always have someone that can approve the group. But then the approval is optional. You can choose not to use it. So I'll choose myself as the owner of this group. Then I'll be adding the two people I just created now, which is John Doe and James Doe. So I'll be adding them to this group. So now I'll create this group. So while I'm creating this group now, I want to go back to okay, I think there was a mistake here. So let me go back to the group I just created now. I think I didn't give it a role. So let me come here. Okay, so I want to give this role, this group, the user administrator, since it's my IT support. So I would have done that earlier, but I think I missed that. So I'll just assign this. I'm just going to assign the role now. So after assigning the role, so I would show how we can enable PIM on that role. So I'm waiting for this user to sign in. I don't know what's delaying it. So while this user is still trying to load, I would come to the all services. So when we get to the all services, we always have PIM there. So one thing we should note also is that when we want to use PIM, you need to have the Azure Premium P2 or the Enterprise Mobility Plus Security E5 license. So if you don't have that license, you would not be able to use the PIM feature in Azure. So now I will just go to identity. You can search for it here. If you to make it fast, you can just search for PIM. So if I search for PIM, so this is PIM. So I would go to the Azure roles. So when I go to the Azure roles, I'll go to roles now. So when I'm here now, I will just go to the user administrator. So when you see this now, okay, these are the previous people that I actually gave this particular role. So I can always click on the role. When I click on this, I can always come to update, and when I come to update, you can see it's on eligible now. So setting this on eligible, there is still active here, but since we are dealing with PIM, we are going to make it eligible, and you can see the maximum allowed duration for it is 1 year. So I can save this since it's already there. But aside that, there are other stuff we can. So let me just go back one more time. So I can come to settings also. Let me click on the settings. So when we come to the settings here, click on the edit button. There are lots you can do here. Do the maximum duration that you want a user to um, access a particular resources after they elevate their role is 8 hours. There you can choose to make it 24 hours depending on the group you're creating. If maybe this group is for compliance, where you know they have to do content search and sometimes the mailbox are really large and it will take a lot of time, you can always make it 24 hours for them. You can choose to reduce it, and the time frame is, I think it should be zero point 0.5 to 24 hours. So you can choose the maximum time you want a particular users to have when they tend to access these resources. But from the end of the users, they can choose any time they want. But this is the maximum time that you want them to choose. Now we also have required justification. Like I said, you can choose to untick it, but it's always good you leave that tick so that they can always justify why they need that role anytime they're trying to activate it. So if you have an IT support system, ticketing system, you can choose to tick this, but I won't be ticking this. If you have a system where they use support ticket, you can always input the ticket number so you can always connect them when you need. Then require approval. So this is going to be ticked because I selected myself, I'll be approving it. So we also have assignments. So you can see the assignment, we can allow permanent eligibility. So, but I'm not going to do that. I would leave it here, and also permanent active. So I'm not going to do that. And you can see I said for this user, the user will require MFA on active assignments and justification also. So the notification I spoke about, these are where you can always impute the notifications for the emails you want to receive it anytime a user is trying to activate their role. So I will just click on update while I update this. Then let me go back to this user. Let me just try to refresh. I don't know why it's delayed. Okay, I think there was an issue. So let me just try to log into this user very fast. So I just activate it and then I'm done. So let me just try to, I think it's John Doe. Okay. So now I'm logged in as this user. So I will just try to go to my Azure Active Directory for this user. So now when you see this user logged in, when I come to user, you'll see this user does not have the role to create a new user. You can see there's no this is grayed out. But then if this user wants to elevate their role, what you just need to go is to go to all services like we did earlier, and then if you scroll to identity, like I said, you can always find the pimp there, so you can also search for it. So when this user goes to this particular place, what the user needs to do is just go to their roles. So when they go to their role, you will see that right here, this user has this particular role assigned to them, and then they can choose to activate it. So I will try to activate this now. So when I try to activate this, it's going to prompt me for MFA. You can see nothing is happening here. Everything is grayed out. So once I click on continue now, it's going to be asking me for MFA. So I will just use the Microsoft Authenticator app on my phone right now and try to log in very fast. So I would add this user now. Let me just set this up real fast. Okay. So now I would go and click on next. Let me just try to hit refresh. For some reason, my internet is lagging, but
You're good. You're doing a great job.
okay. Okay, just hold on. Let me tell somebody to disconnect from my router so I can get more speed.
There you go.
Okay, so we're here now. So I'll try to set up the MFA real quick. So I will scan this now. I'm just going to go to add account, work account, then use my scan. So this is just to verify that, okay, the person logging in is who the person is. So I'll click on next. And when I click on next, I'll wait for this to be done. And let's see what's going to happen next. Okay, let's just give it some time. I think it should come on. Yep. Okay, sorry. It was asking me to approve on my phone, so I wasn't looking at my phone. So I'm going to approve this now. So I think that was where the delay was coming from now. Okay, so I just approved this. Okay, so that's fine now. So I'm in. So now that this user is verified with their MFA, I'll try to log in again. So when I log in with this particular user, now you see I now have the ability to choose the time frame I want. So I gave the maximum time frame 11 hours, right? So but this user can always choose the time frame suitable for them to complete a particular task. So now they can also choose to put a custom start time. That means if you're activating this, you may choose to say, okay, I want this to be activated maybe by 9 p.m. Then you're ready to start work by 9 p.m., but you don't just want to forget, or maybe the person that is going to be approving it may not be available by 9 p.m. So you can always set a custom start time so that once that time reach, you will get the role. So, but now I won't be using this. So I will just come here and give a reason for the why I need to elevate myself to this role. So I can just say creating of new staff profile. So once I do that, I'll click activate. So now I've activated the role, but then this I'm waiting for approval from my account. So I'll just click on my request, or yeah, so you can see now this particular user is having a pending approval. So let me just go back to, let me come back here. Yeah, so let me click on pending request, or I can also click on approval. Yeah. So let me go to approval request. So the pending request now is coming from John Doe. So I will just click on approval request. So let me select. So that means you could have multiple requests. So you can always choose which you want to deny and approve. So I'll be approving this particular one. So I have to also give a justification. Yes. So I would just say John Doe. So all these are for audit purpose also. So once I approve this, I would be back to so I'm going to refresh this. So you can see the I think the pending request is gone. So now let me just rush back real quick to the Azure Active Directory. So once I come back to the Azure Active Directory, I'll go to the users. Now you can see this particular user can now create users in the tenant. So now what I just did, I just gave the privilege identity management, I assigned it to a group. So with this, it makes your workflow in your organization easy. So you can always just add users instead of creating this privilege role for every single users. If a set of users are supposed to perform a particular task, and instead of giving them those roles individually, you can always assign it to a group, and you can always add users to that group and take those users out of that group anytime you're done, they are done with the role, and you need to maybe add a new person to the group. So I'll be stopping there for now. So let me just scroll to the end of my slide. So everything in this slide was just a breakdown of what I just did now. I was just trying to put it up there so that if maybe anybody is interested in trying it out, they could follow my step. So now before I finish the whole distance, so I also stated here who can extend and renew. So what this actually means is, if maybe you have a guest user and then you probably had an agreement with them that they are going to be working for 3 months in your organization, and then you created this particular group for them, and after they worked for a particular time frame, and you see the they had or the project they were carrying on, the time frame was not enough for them to complete it, you can always choose to extend it. And also, if maybe they are done or the time frame has elapsed, you can also choose to always renew it. So a user can also request for extension and also renewal. So, and when it comes to extending and renewing this, it is the global administrator and also the privilege role administrator that can extend or renew the Azure AD role assignments. So for today, okay, they say they cannot see the slide. People are saying they cannot see the slide. So I don't know if maybe it's because of the. Hello, Dan, can you hear me?
Yeah, I think the slides are showing here. I've got the.
Okay, you're saying. Oh, okay. I saw some people saying they cannot see it. So what I'm just trying to say in summary is the people that can extend and renew the privilege role is the global administrator or the privilege role administrator. So today I think I've spent a lot of time, a little bit among above the time I was given. So I would like to round up here, and thank you so much once again, Dan, Matthew, for giving me the opportunity to speak in this event. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks. That was great. And I think the questions were about getting the slides and the recordings. The recording will be available after this event, so you can rewatch it, or that is available. Matthew typically posts these to his blog as well. Matthew sends his regards. He's not feeling well today, but sent us his I don't even know, regards, or wished us a great event today. So I'm sure you can. Solomon, do you have a problem with us posting your slides as well?
It's fine. You can always post the slide. It's fine. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah.
Welcome. Yeah, thanks. Appreciate that. Thanks, everyone. Casey says he really likes privileged identity management. There's only so much you can do to authenticate a user. And when attacks happen from both inside and outside the org, it's not enough to rely on identity alone. Yeah, that was a great demo. Welcome. Thank you, Casey, for joining us. And I believe we're live on many different platforms. We have a number of people here helping us with that. I believe our next presenter is Marcel, correct?
Hi there. Yep. Yeah, first of all, I'd like to say again to Jeremiah, that was really cool. PIM is such a great technology to have and to implement in, it's just really great to see. So thanks for that. That's really cool.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Alrighty, so I guess I'll start my talk. I'm going to share my screen here. Just bear with me a moment, because I've got a couple of slides. Let's see here if I can share that. Just let me know. Right, so I'm going to talk today about Azure Functions. So my name's Marcel Lupo. I said earlier in the slide, I'm a recent Microsoft MVP in developer technologies, and also work as a DevOps architect manager at Avanade. These slides will also be available, I assume, Dan, for anyone who wants to have a look at them. But my Twitter handle is there. If you want to come and ask me a question, or my LinkedIn, if you want to connect and we can have a chat. I blog on Dev2 as well. You can see the alias on there is PWD9000. And then I'm also on GitHub. So a lot of the stuff that I do, I put the code on GitHub for people to go and try out themselves to the community. So let's talk about like what and why, what is Azure Functions? So Azure Functions are basically event-driven compute-on-demand experiences. They provide serverless compute in Azure, and they're kind of the building blocks that are usually used to build APIs. You can write them to, it's snippets of code that can respond to database changes, process IoT streams, manage message queues, lots of different things. It offers simplified, scalable, event-driven solutions with a focus on writing code to solve real-world problems in a high-speed, data-driven world. Now, another way, that for me is a lot the developer explanation, and another way that I would like to explain what the functions are is, say, for example, you have, imagine you have, say you're coming from an ops background and you have a server, call it your script server. And on your script server, you have a bunch of scripts, PowerShell scripts they could be, and then you use Task Scheduler to, run one of the scripts, maybe it backs up the server or a bunch of servers. And then the script stops, the scheduler stops, that's done. And then at 1 a.m. you run another script to do a cleanup somewhere. Yeah. And, that server is on all the time. You're paying for the server, the power, you have to manage that server, you have to patch it, your script server, even though it's just running minimal scripts in the day. Now, Azure Functions are almost like your scripts on that script server. Now, imagine if you could have a server that runs on a timer or a schedule that could just execute your script, but turn the server on automatically, and then power it back off again when the script's finished and running. And you're only like paying for the run of that script. So functions can be used as that in that scenario as well, where there are serverless bits of code that can just execute a task or an API. There's so many different users for Azure Functions. And I do have a little demo here that we're going to show. But what I want to talk about is, what are some of the challenges and risks? So because there are bits of code and scripts that's running in Azure, so, Azure Functions can be, they're event-driven things that basically can be programmed in languages like .NET, Java, Node.js, Python, PHP, even PowerShell, Bash, like scripting languages. You can convert all your scripts or have all your scripts run as functions if you have PowerShell scripts. But I guess the challenges and risks with that is that your function code is going to be available to view. If you're privileged enough to have access to the function code, you could go into the Azure portal and you can look at that function code. Or you can be using your functions are integrated, through Git endpoints like Azure Devops or GitHub or Bitbucket, where the code is also visible. So the question and the challenge comes to, what if your API or your bits of code or your PowerShell needs to basically say, like I said earlier in the example about you have a script maybe that backs up a bunch of servers, but maybe for that to happen, you need to give the script a username and a password or something like that to your backup system. How can you protect that secret from being exposed in, when your function is running, or how can you consume secrets in function code? And that's what we're going to look at pretty much today. So how we would protect secrets in code is through Azure Key Vault. So Azure Key Vault is a service that provides centralized secrets management, and you have full control over who can access secrets through either RBAC or access policies, and there's an audit history and a history of all the secrets and everything. So secrets can actually be accessed by function apps using the function apps identity. If you I do have a demo here where I'll show you how that works. Or you could access your secrets through access policy. But what I'll show is how we can actually enable our function to have an identity. And that's almost like you can almost see it as like a service account that you attach or is part of the function app. So the API is almost like a living thing, because it's got an identity associated with it, and then you can then actually take that identity and give it certain access or permissions against other things. In our case, we'll give it access to a key vault because we're going to configure our code to actually go and consume some secrets from a key vault. So what's nice about that is you don't need to really make any code changes in your function code when you're consuming secrets. And I'll go into that in a little bit here. So secrets can basically be referenced from the key vault and consumed in a function code using the function app's application settings, which acts as environment variables. Now I'll show what I mean if you don't understand what that means. But say, for example, let's go back to the example where you have your server and you have your scripts sitting on your server. Now, that server would have environment variables that the server can use, stuff like the home directory, all sorts of different environment variables. Now, when we kind of read from a key vault secrets, what's going to happen is the machine or the server or the Docker node that sits underneath the function app that spins up to run the function will basically go and read the secrets that you want from the Azure Key Vault, and then and on that machine will become an environment variable, and then we can consume those environment variables in the code. And I'll show you that in a minute. But first of all, we'll set up a identity for our function app. So this is kind of the settings for function apps identity, where we can assign a system assigned identity, which will just give it a identity that we can then permission against something. In our case, it's going to be a key vault. So once that identity is set up, we can go and say, I want to give this function access to my key vault. And you'll see there, I give it the scope as key vault, I give it the subscription, I give it the resource, which is the key vault. And then I also give it a role. So in my case, I just want to use key vault secrets user, because I just want to be able to read the secrets and kind of look at the secrets and get them, or have this function be able to get them. Then jumping to the key vault, we set up, I just set up two secrets in the key vault. One is called secuser1, and the other one's called secpass1. And secuser1 is just basically a username, and secpass1 is just basically a password. Say, for example, that's your backup server username and password to log in to start a backup job or something like that. Now, here's where the reference can, in the function app, there's under the configuration application settings. Now, how we reference the key vault is we will create the environment, we could call them, we create the environment variables of the machine. So that's underneath the function. So for example, in my case here, I've set up kv_secpass01 and kv_secuser01. And you'll see in the value, I've not put any secret value in there. I've put in a reference. Now, if we just quickly look at what the Key Vault reference syntax is for web applications and functions to access a Key Vault, there's a couple of ways that we can do this. So we can have the at Microsoft.keyvault, and then we give it the vault name, the secret name, and the secret version. Or we can use a URI, where we give the URL endpoint of the secret, basically just in the form of a URL, which is https://keyvault9.vault.azure.net/secrets/secret name/secret version. Now, if you want to use the latest version, because remember I said earlier, you can kind of create a secret and then you can update those secrets, so there's different versions of the secret. So say you updated the password and you just want your function to always consume the latest password version, you'll just use the bottom one there, where you specify the secrets and then the secret name, and then append it with just a slash. By just putting that slash at the end, it's just going to go and fetch the very latest version of the secret. Unless you have a very specific version you can consume, then you can put that version number in that URL there. So here is and I'll show you this demo in just a moment, but here is basically a very simple PowerShell script. And you can see there on line 17 and 18, I've actually created a variable called user, and you'll see that I'm calling $env : so this, just to kind of explain, Azure functions can either be Windows-based functions or Linux-based functions or Docker containers. Now, in this example here, I'm obviously using a Windows-based function, because if you look at lines 17 and 18 here, you'll notice that the way I'm calling the environment variable is through a variable called a PowerShell variable called $env, which is the system environment. And I'm just calling, if I just jump back 2 slides, if I just quickly jump back 2 slides, you see I'm referencing kv, environment kv_secuser1 for user, and environment kv_secpass01 for the password. But if I just go back 2 slides there, you'll see this is where I configured my application settings, and in my function code, I'm just consuming those application settings as environment variables. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to write that out to the console. the user and password. I mean, you wouldn't obviously do this in a production, code, but just to show the outcome. If you look at the bottom here, so let me just make that big again. You'll see at the bottom here it outputs the username and password to the screen. So let me show you this quickly in Azure. I'm just going to quickly jump into Azure here. So I've already set up. Let me just make my screen a little bit bigger here so I can see that a bit better. So, say for example, I've got my function here. I've got a key vault here, and let's take a quick look at the key vault. So I'm going to go in the key vault, and you'll see here's my two secrets: secret pass 01 and secret user 01. And if I go into secret user 01, for example, you see I only have one version at the moment. And if we look at the secret, you can see that that secret is basically called PWD 900 admin. And if I go to my sec pass 01, we can see that there is like a deleted secret called super secret 2021, just a bunch of special characters, and that's my password, for example, kept in the key vault. Now, what's nice about the function here, let's take a quick look. You'll see there the operating system is a Windows function, so I can call that using Windows variables. It depends what language you pick as well. You can have C#, like I said. You can have Python, you can use PowerShell. It's so powerful. You just, whatever language you're comfortable in, you can use here. It's really amazing. So, so I'm using Windows here. And if I quickly jump to my configuration, let me just quickly go in there. And then you'll see that I've got my application settings here. Now, here are those environment variables that I was talking about. And you can actually see that my key vault underscore secret user is using key vault reference. And if we show those values, you can see there that, those are not actually being exposed to, maybe you have function developers that are working on functions. You don't want to, you're maybe a security officer, you're managing secrets through Key Vault, and you don't want your developers or people working on functions to especially, because this is kind of sensitive information to just display here in the Azure portal, depending on who's got access to this function, your secrets can get leaked, right? So you're just kind of referencing the secret key, and then the value will be consumed within the from the key vault, and the value will be consumed within the code. So I wanted to make that clear, that you can set up your environment variables in your app settings, and they can just be referencing key vault. Now, if we look at the function that I've got here, I just called it Key Vault demo. This is actually just a PowerShell script. So if I go into code and test, let's just open this up. The demo gods are not so kind tonight with me and Jeremiah earlier with the loading screens. But anyway, we got in here. So you can see here it's a very, very basic script. All I'm doing is I'm taking that user, that kv underscore sec user and kv underscore sec pass, and I'm just assigning those two environment variables to another variable really called user and pass. And then all I'm going to do is kind of consume that by writing it out to the console here. So if I go to, I can program all my script here, and I can then run save. And what's nice about functions, right, is like, say if this was a backup job, I needed to run at night. This would kind of be my interface, you could say task scheduler. there is no server for me to maintain, and this script will just run. I could just put a timer, a scheduler on this function to run at midnight, for example, and what will happen is the script will just run, and I'll only be paying for the time that this script runs. I'm not going to pay for a server that's on 24 hours running just one script at midnight, for example. It's it's like moving all your scripts into or your APIs into small like workers, you could say, to do stuff for you, or to they're kind of the building blocks for APIs in modern cloud anyway, functions, which is really, really great. So let me do a test and run here. I'm just going to execute this manually, and let me see. Let me see if I can make the screen fit a little bit better. Just like that. I'm just going to run that, and oops, I think closed the window there by accident. Let me just open the logs here, and I'm going to execute this script. What's nice is the log here will actually show me the output, which looks like a big error here. But if you look at the bottom here, you'll see that my username retrieved from the vault is PWD 900. Sorry, PWD 900 admin, and there is my super secret password that's been retrieved. Let me just refresh that. Clear that. Let me just run it again. That looks a bit better. So yeah, so as you can see, there we go. There is the data being pulled from my Key Vault. And that's how you would basically consume secrets in your function without having to expose them through app settings or maybe hard coding them in your scripts. I would, that's not good. That's not a good way really to do it. I mean, it's a very basic demo, and that concludes my demo basically. But yeah, I don't know if there was any questions or anything like that. Again, I'll just put this slide back up here if you want to come and ask me any questions on Twitter or LinkedIn. The slides will be available as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, we can. I know Matthew typically takes the presentations and makes them available online. So I'm sure when he's back, we'll get that. But thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I don't see any chat comments here that have made their way to the overlay, but that's not to say that people won't follow up with you, Marcel.
Yeah, no, that's
thanks
fine.
Thanks for the Twitter address and the LinkedIn and GitHub. I'll be sure to follow you on those different platforms as well.
Cool, awesome, thanks, and thanks for having me tonight here and sharing some knowledge, and yeah, checking out all the other talks, and it's been really interesting so far.
Yeah, Arindam, I know you were next, and then it looks like Frank has joined us as well. Did you want to share your slides, your screen? Do you want me to put them up?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. I'll go with sharing my screen because I have the demo as well in the browsers. Okay, so let me share my screen. Okay.
There we go.
Okay, so I'm going to speak about Lighthouse, Azure Lighthouse. So a little introduction about myself. My name is Arvind Mitra, and as I said, I'm a Azure specialist, Azure architect, and a DevOps architect. I've been working in cloud for the last 5-6 years, overall of 16 or 17 years of experience. You can find me in LinkedIn. You can find me also in GitHub. I mostly like blogs, mostly in DevOps. I try to automate as much as possible with Terraform, PowerShell, with Azure DevOps primarily. My blogs are also published in Dev Community, and I also have a profile in Session Nice for all the various speakers and kind of a thing. So, I mean, feel free to connect with me. Feel free to check my blogs and kind of a thing. So this is the agenda which I'm going to present right now. So it's like a bottom-up approach. So I'm going to speak about concepts and then about the use cases of Lighthouse, how the deployment works. I mean, like the quick and the dirty way, how you can automate lighthouses, what are the real-time challenges, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask after the session. Going to the next slide, regarding Azure Lighthouse, components of Lighthouse, and I mean, what is the cost of the Lighthouse? So let me start by saying,
Arindam, I'm seeing your presenter view, it looks like. So you're still on slide 1. It might be the wrong screen shared or something.
Okay. Share the entire screen itself. Can you now see my screen?
I can see your screen, but you're still, there we go. Perfect.
Okay. Can you see the concept one?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So what is Azure Lighthouse? So Azure Lighthouse, the service, Microsoft created this whole service with the intention of keeping in mind all the service providers. Now, there's two views, when we manage clouds. One is the service provider, one is the customer. So the service provider are mainly responsible for managing the customer subscription, resource group, all the resources, and in many cases, they also do the tenant management as well. Now, imagine a situation that, there's a service provider and that service provider has to support almost 10 or 20 customers at a time. So every time these service provider engineers, they have to work on the customer side, they have to switch those tenants. And this is where is a problem. In the normal environment, before Lighthouse was released by Microsoft, in the normal environment, how do we do this? It's simple, you have the service provider and they have their own identities in their own tenant. And then there is a customer, they have their own tenant and they have their own identities, they have their own users. The most typical scenario you will see is that you invite these service providers identities to their tenant, which means that they are like guest user to the customer tenant. And typically this has been done using B2B, which is the business to business collaboration, which we do. And once they are there, so service provider identity is there in the customer customer tenant. And once it is there, then we manage it with Azure AD groups, because then the Azure AD group can be put into the subscription with the assigned role-based access control, and that group can also be managed using access packages, and those access packages can also be a part of catalogs. And then we do the user assignment using access packages, because then it is going to replicate not only to one group, but all the multiple groups you want to have. So where does the Azure Lighthouse here fits in? The Azure Lighthouse here fits in a way that all the technical details which I said, that inviting a service provider identities, creating a group, assigning them role-based access control, putting those group in the access packages, those access packages again in a catalog, then assigning the user using access packages. So these are a lot of operational tasks on the customer side. This can all be eradicated with Azure Lighthouse. So this comes to the next point, which is the component of Azure Lighthouse. So what exactly we are supposed to do? So on the service provider side, we only create the groups. And we only create the groups, and those groups are delegated to the customer tenant using Azure Lighthouse. So in a way that the service provider has their identity there itself, we don't have to replicate that identity to the next tenant, but we just assign the groups there, and then in the users, we put the users on the service provider AAD group. And then with the Azure Lighthouse, we onboard either the subscription or the resource group. Does Lighthouse cost? No, it doesn't cost anything. It's free of cost. All that matters is the underlying resources which they are managing. So those are the typical Azure consumption which you are doing. But in general, when you are onboarding any subscription or you're onboarding any resource group of the customer side from the service provider side, Azure Lighthouse doesn't cost you anything. What are the typical use cases why and where you can use the Azure Lighthouse? Okay, so typically all the companies prior to cloud, they had their own data centers, and these data centers, they always have a data center provider. The typical scenario which I have seen in the various customer locations I have worked on is that when they are starting this whole cloud journey, the first thing they do is they ask the data center provider that, okay, can you help us manage the cloud? And when they go to a data center provider, the only thing which they do first is onboarding their existing customer to either enterprise agreement or CSP model or maybe pay as you go. So this is the billing part they are only trying to do and support so that they are managing their subscription and everything. So when they are doing this, then they are only concerned about the billing because the customer is actually not paying the bill. It's again the bill is coming. The Microsoft agreement is tied up with the provider, and there what they can do is they can onboard all the subscriptions, and once the subscription is onboarded, they can view the consumptions equally, and they don't have to switch the tenants. The Azure Tenant Management. When we talk about Azure Tenant Management, I talked about two use cases, which is like onboarding a subscription and then you onboard a resource group. But there is also like a preview feature, which is a privileged identity management. So even you can also onboard privileged identity management with which you can access, you can manage the time-based access of the users or maybe approval-based access of the users. And this is one of also the use cases of Lighthouse, which you can do with Azure Tenant Management. And finally is the Azure Service Management over Portal. So now the customer has their own, they can have one or many subscriptions. Each subscription will have resource groups, and these resource groups will contain various kind of resources. So the service provider, we are onboarding the customer subscription to the service provider using Lighthouse. As soon as we do, then probably we can view all the resources, and depending upon what kind of a role-based access control is being configured through Lighthouse from the service provider tenant to the customer tenant, depending upon that, you can manage all the Azure services over the portal. Typically, when you start with Azure Lighthouse, what you do is you create a group on the service provider side, and then that group is delegated either the contributor role or the reader role. And this reader role is basically used for the first use case, which is called the Azure consumption. And the contributor role is basically used for the second and the third use cases, which is Azure Tenant and Azure Service Management over the portal. The deployment strategies. Yes, the most easiest possible way is using the Azure Resource Manager template. And this can be done over the Azure portal. So, it's a typical thing. It's ARM templates, it has a typical JSON file, it has a parameter file, it is just like a key value pair. The key is the JSON file, and again, the value is the template, which has all the values. Now, when we talk about, and I will show you in a short, in some time that, in the demo itself that, how it looks like. But typically, what does it require for Azure Lighthouse to onboard a resource group and a subscription on the customer side? So the first thing which is required is we create an AAD group on the service provider side, and that AAD group will be delegated, or that AAD group will be delegated to the customer subscription or the resource group based upon what we want to onboard. The other thing is regarding the JSON part. So the JSON template, it has three most important parameter. The first important parameter is that I said that in the service provider side, you are going to create an AAD group. So when you create an AAD group, it has an object ID. So that object ID is required. Now I also mentioned that AAD group will be delegated RBAC. So now all the built-in RBAC roles have a defined principal ID. So we take those principal ID. So if we are assigning contributor, we take the built-in ID of the contributor. If we are taking reader, we take the built-in ID of the reader, and that we assign it. And the most important part would be the tenant ID of the service provider. So we put the tenant ID of the service provider. And that is all is required in the JSON file to configure and onboard the subscription or the resource group. The most important point about Azure Lighthouse is that when you are onboarding a subscription and a resource or a resource group, you have to be the owner of the subscription. This is the mandatory thing. Otherwise, you cannot onboard a subscription. The second point is when you are onboarding a subscription, you can only onboard one subscription at a time. If you try to do 2 or 3 subscriptions all together in one go, it is not possible. This is a limitation of Azure Lighthouse. But multiple resource group onboarding is supported. But again, you have to be the owner of the subscription. The automation part, yes. Microsoft has a very, very well documented PowerShell and CLI like an automation available. You can, of course, automate it. You can also automate it using Terraform. In Terraform, they basically have 2 modules. One is definition, and another is assignment. So the definition is, again, it's the principal ID of the built-in RBAC. It is a tenant ID, and then it's object ID of the AED group. And once you build the definition, then comes the assignment. So it requires a definition ID. And then probably after that, you basically are assigning it, and with this assignment, you are basically onboarding the subscription and or the resource group, depending upon what you are doing. But when I say that it is PowerShell and CLI is supported, of course, this can also be integrated with Azure Devops. So with Azure Devops, you can integrate Terraform, or you can integrate PowerShell or CLI. But since DevOps and Azure, the integration, it always happens over service principal, and behind the service principal, it is a service account or the SPI. So that SPI has to be the owner of the subscription. Otherwise, the whole Terraform plan will fail, and the PowerShell and CLI will fail as well. So this is the most important concept, which we have to take care. No matter whether you're doing with the resource management template, or whether you're doing with PowerShell, or with CLI, or with Terraform, you have to take care of that. This is the most important aspect of Lighthouse. If you're not the owner of the subscription, it will not work. You will not be able to onboard a subscription or even the resource group as well. Moving to the challenges part. Since we have recently, in my organization, we have recently onboarded Azure Lighthouse. So these are the real-time challenges which I've seen that we are facing, and we are trying to remedify, and we are trying to mitigate, and we are trying to find a side door, or maybe an alternate that, okay, keeping their Lighthouse, what all things are that we can do. So the first challenge is the Devops integration. Now, okay, you onboarded the subscription, you onboarded a resource group. Okay, you now have the customer's resources, you have the contributor RBAC. Okay, you can make these changes. Agreed. But what happens when an organization, the entire build, run, and the deployment of Azure resources, including monitoring, including day-to-day operations, what happens if an organization is running everything over DevOps? Then Azure Lighthouse doesn't fit well there. Because, with Lighthouse, you can manage all the changes over the portal, but when it comes to DevOps integration, there is no DevOps integration for Lighthouse. Then again, you have to fall back to the process where we have to again invite users over B2B, and then probably once the identity is available on the customer tenant, you put it on the required groups, and those groups are again mapped into DevOps organization, DevOps project, and that is how you manage it out. So this is one of the challenges which we are facing right now for DevOps integration, and honestly, we are falling back to the same thing. We have Lighthouse, of course, to do the portal management and the visibility, or the cost management, but for the DevOps integration, we have to fall back to the same scenario. Azure Managed Resource Group with denied assignment. What does it mean? It means that there are a lot of services in Azure. when you deploy it, it deploys along with it a managed resource group. The most common example is Azure Kubernetes Service, Databricks, Azure Synapse. So whenever you are deploying this service, along with that, it also additionally deploys a resource group. And that resource group actually has the real resources. For example, if I take Azure Kubernetes Service. So when you deploy the Azure Kubernetes Service, the orchestration of the AKS service is deployed on that particular resource group, but the actual VMware scale sets, managed identity, ingress controllers, Nginx load balancers, all these services, which is together making the Kubernetes, is actually deployed in the managed resource group and not the resource group which you have selected while deployment. Similarly with Databricks, when you are deploying Databricks, the Databricks is tightly coupled with public and private subnet, and it also has it also deploys a managed resource group. It means that when you are running any kind of computation on the Databricks platform, it is spinning up a cluster. When it is spinning up a cluster, that cluster is actually spinning up virtual machines, and those virtual machines are actually getting created in the managed resource group. Now, where does Lighthouse have a problem? Typically, when you're deploying Databricks resource, the managed resource group which gets deployed with the Databricks, it has a deny assignment, and this is by design of Microsoft. It is nothing which you can control with portal deployment or with Terraform or with Azure CLI or with PowerShell. This is by design, and this is by the architecture of Microsoft, that the managed resource group has a deny assignment. If a resource group has a deny assignment, Azure Lighthouse cannot onboard those resource groups. So this is again a limitation of Azure Lighthouse. Now, when we come to the third point, which is resources with granular RBAC, what does it mean exactly? It means that right now we are talking about the high-level ones, the reader, the contributor. We are talking what happens, like, for example, I have Azure Kubernetes Service, and I know that in order for me to access Azure Kubernetes Service, I need the cluster user role to be assigned to my identity. Otherwise, I cannot log in with my kubectl command. Now, when I'm onboarding like a subscription or maybe a resource group where the AK is sitting, and I have a contributor access. Okay, so the service provider through Lighthouse had got the contributor access, but that contributor access is applied on the resource group level. But the cluster admin role, the RBAC, is assigned on the resource level. Then it doesn't allow. It also creates a lot of problems, and then we have to again onboard the resource with a different RBAC model. So this is also one of the issues which we are facing with Azure Lighthouse at the moment. And finally is the Azure Key Vault. In the production environment, it is very rarely I have seen that the Key Vault is being managed by role-based access control. The Key Vault is always protected by two entities. One entity is access policies, and the second entity is, we are protecting the Key Vault endpoints with firewall rules. That is how we do it. Now, in my organization, I have Key Vault with access policies. I also have Key Vault which is protected. The public endpoint of Key Vault is protected by my organization public IP addresses, the NAT public IP addresses, and those are applied over firewall rules. Now, when this is done, it means that when I'm talking about access policies, the access policies can be applied over groups, over user identities, and over service principals. So these are the three entities, on which you can apply the you can apply the access policy of Key Vault. Now, with Azure Lighthouse, there is no identities available of the service provider in my tenant, because that is the beauty of Lighthouse, that you don't have to have any identity on your customer tenant. Everything is managed seamlessly from the service provider tenant. But now, since the service provider's identity is not there in the customer tenant, how will you apply on the Key Vault access policies? Because there's no identity. I mean, I can still add some firewall policy. I can still create some exceptions, but what happens to the access policies because there is no identity? So this is again one of the limitations, because there might be situations that a service provider would like to fetch some secrets over portal or something. There can be exception situations out there. But since there's no identity, so they cannot fetch, they cannot get, they cannot list, they cannot do anything with the secrets. So these are the four major challenges, the real-time challenges I have seen in Azure Lighthouse till date. Maybe in future, if I see more challenges, happy to update in my blog. That this is the typical challenges which I normally see and kind of thing. Before I take any questions, I will just quickly show, because I cannot show you the end-to-end Lighthouse implementation, because when we onboard the subscription or the resource group, it typically takes from 30 minutes to 45 minutes. So what I have done is I have I have arranged a few things which I can quickly show you guys.
That'd be perfect.
Yeah, so you can see that that the first thing is I'll go here. So this is the GitHub where you can find all your Azure Lighthouse samples. You see that here the templates are available. So you can see that what kind of onboarding you can do. So you can do with subscription, you can do with resource group, you can do with multiple resource group, you can do with PIM, all kind of things which I was trying to say that you can do. You can do tenant management, you can do the Azure resource management, and you can also do the billing part. And this is all the part of the templates which are there. Now you can also click the auto deployment part, and this is what I was trying to explain, that this is the quick way of deploying Azure Lighthouse, that you are using the resource manager built-in templates, and you can click. As soon as you click this one, the first thing you will get a view like this, the custom deployment. So in the custom deployment, if you can just edit your the parameters, so you will get this layout, but you don't have to fill in here, because as we saw here that as you saw here that we have the templates. Now if I click on this template, which I've already done here, so you can see that there's a JSON file and there's a parameter file. So this is like a key value pair. You don't have to do anything out here, but if you click on this one, then probably you can see that what is the component of Azure Lighthouse. So what is the most important component of the Lighthouse is this is the tenant ID of the service provider. You have to mention out here. This is the principal ID. The principal ID is basically the object ID of the service provider AD group which you have created. So once you once you create a group on the service provider side, you just get the object ID, you put it here. What is the role definition ID? This is the built-in RBAC principal ID or the role-based ID which you put out here, and then you just put some group. So in here you can you can have multiple. So one maybe you're having with contributor, one you will have with reader, and the third one you can have it with maybe user administrator, user access administrator role, and kind of a thing. And this is the most important. So you fill up all these details, and then maybe go here, just replace it, save it, apply it, and then the onboarding starts. Now I also showed you that Microsoft also has documentation regarding the automation part. So here, if I scroll down out here, so you see that all the templates which you see in the GitHub, Microsoft also has given all the templates out here. So you can download, you can edit, and you can do everything. And if I scroll down a little bit down, then you also see that you have the PowerShell snippets, and you also have Azure CLI snippets, which you can use. And you see out here that it's always that the template file is here. And this template file here, you have to mention both the JSON and the parameters file, both, otherwise it will not work. So you have to give the key, and you have to give the value pair, and then if you deploy it, it works like a charm. Coming back to this Azure RM one, so this is the Terraform provider one. So you see that I have here I have the Azure Lighthouse definition. So by definition, it's again the same thing. It's nothing different. Here you see that this is the built-in contributor contributor RBAC ID, and this is a service provider tenant, and this is the scope. So here the scope is subscription, but you can also go give resource group. And here the principal ID is again the object ID of the group and kind of a thing, and this is just a display name which shows you how it does. Now this is all about how it looks like and how you can do it, and everything is readily available, and you can do it in your way. If you prefer Terraform, you can do Terraform. If you do PowerShell, you can do PowerShell. But maybe in like in a couple of days, because I've been developing this for some time now, maybe a couple of days, I'll publish my blog where I do the Azure Devops and Lighthouse Terraform integration, and then you could give a try that how this can be done. Coming back, so if you see here, this is my side of the subscription, because I have taken my subscription, and then I have taken my colleague's subscription, and this is like so if you see out here that so this is this is my subscription, so I am the service provider, and this service provider, I have created a LH contributor group, and here again I have created an LH reader group. This is how I create. But if you see here, if you go to Azure assignment, so this is my subscription, but you see that I have no RBAC. It's just a dummy group in my service. It has nothing to do anything. But when I apply this whole thing, and then what happens is that I get once it is onboarded, you see that I have my other subscription. So I can view the subscription from this list. I don't have to switch tenant and everything because I've onboarded it. But this is the subscription view. But if you want to see from the provider view, so this is like how it looks like. So you search, on the search bar, you search like my customers. Once you search customer, you click on the customer. And when you click on the customer, you see that I have my colleague Anand, and I have onboarded his subscription. So this is the name of his subscription. You see that there's only one subscription which is onboarded, that is account which has been showed. And if you want to go to delegation, you see that this is the name of the subscription, and you see that so this is the group is LH contributor. So this LH contributor is not on my colleague's subscription. This is on my subscription because I am the provider and he is the customer. And this is the group on my side, and this contributor RBAC is tightly coupled with the provider group. And now if I go here again back to the group, and if I'm already in the role assignment. So now if I switch from my subscription to my colleague's subscription, you see the contributor RBAC is already assigned. So this is like the one thing which I can show you the most, because when typically I can show the onboarding, but the problem is that in order for this to replicate out here in customer and in delegation, it normally takes roughly between 30 to 45, or sometimes maybe even an hour, depending upon how fast Azure is. So this is all about Azure Lighthouse. Now I'll come back to the slide again, and I will just fast forward it. And feel free. If you have any questions, happy to answer.
That's great. Hopefully my typing wasn't too loud. I was off mute more than I maybe expected to be. Anybody here have questions? Frank, thanks for joining us.
No problem, Dan. That was a good overview there of the Azure Lighthouse.
Yeah, that was awesome.
I had not seen that before, so that was great to see in person. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dan, for inviting. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Remind me again, are you on Twitter? I didn't find a Twitter account.
No, I'm not on Twitter. I'm just
GitHub, LinkedIn. Awesome.
Yes, I will also a little bit working a little bit more detail on Lighthouse. I will publish the blog as well, and feel free to use the slide. But I will also send you the updated blog and my updated DevOps integration and how you can do it with pipeline and everything, so that if anybody needs to use it, they can always do it.
Really appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah.
Excellent. Frank, I know you joined us a little bit late. You want to do a quick introduction? Is there any events coming up or something? We can go around, just see if anybody else wants to announce things, that type of thing.
Hi, Frank Falvey, and I'm an MCT, and I have a few other various Microsoft certifications. On Tuesday coming, myself and Matthew are doing a meetup, and we're doing AZ 900, and I'm doing the AZ 900 kind of overview, and Matthew is doing the Office 365 overview on the meetup on Tuesday. So that's the up and coming event.
Excellent.
That's on Ricardo's. He runs a meetup every Tuesday. Well, not every Tuesday, once a month. So we're just doing that one.
Great. Anyone else? Any upcoming events?
See, you're very busy with loads of events, Dan.
We've been doing quite a bit, so
Yeah.
it's been helpful for Matthew to focus on these, and I know you guys are doing some things together. I'll be over there in a month or two, so hopefully we'll have a chance to maybe meet in person, and it'll be fun.
You're coming to Cove as well, are you?
Where are you?
I'm in Cork.
Yeah, I'm coming over to Ireland, and then Matthew, I think, is going to get me over to Limerick, but we'll figure out, if there's a place in between or where it makes sense to try to meet up.
You're going on a cruise ship, is it?
We're doing a cruise. I don't remember if Cork is one of the stops.
I think it is. Yeah,
I think it is.
You posted a schedule, and I think Cove. That's where the Titanic last stopped.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know at every stop what we were planning to do, so I'm going to be over there before the cruise, and then during the cruise, we've got those stops around the different ports. So I'll let you know the dates.
Are you doing any excursions? Are you going to see Blarney Castle?
I don't know which ones we're doing. My wife is usually in charge of the excursions / are we doing things on our own?
Yeah.
As soon as I have those lists, I'll provide them as well. But should be fun. Looking forward to it. It's been a while. Excellent. Well, thank you everyone for attending. I know in the chat here, it looks like we've got a couple. We had a question about how do you manage privileged identity management crises in the cloud against attackers. And I think that was back to Solomon.
Yeah, I think that question was directed to me.
Okay.
So from the question, I don't really get the question, but then I think he's trying to talk about how you can manage security with. Okay, let me just read it again. How do you manage privileged identity management crisis in the cloud against attackers? So if I would answer that question, I would say PIM is there to resolve issues that are related to attack, because now for you to gain access to a user credential, you don't really get to access those resources once you gain access to the user's credentials. So those resources are not active. So then if you choose to activate those resources, you will need to use MFA, which would help identify if it is actually you. And then you're also sending a justification to someone that is going to approve it. So if at all you probably pass the getting the credentials, I think MFA is there to stop you. And if maybe probably you say you want to, which is not, I don't see the chances of hacking MFA is like 99%. So I think with MFA alone, that's like a lot of security when it comes to PIM also. And then you also have somebody that is going to approve that also. So if probably I'm the admin to approve that, and I know my user is already attacked, and then the justification you're giving me is not clear, and we did not have that conversation, I don't think I'll be approving the privilege role for you. And with that, you won't be able to gain access to those resources.
Exactly.
So I think that should answer the question.
Yeah, least privilege access, MFA, the approval. You don't have standing rights within the environment. Yeah, great point. Excellent. Well, everyone, we are just shy of, I think, 2 hours here for this stream on a Friday afternoon, evening, morning, depending on where you are in the world. And I appreciate everybody coming. If you have other channels or social, feel free to share that. I know this was live on DESA Enterprises. It was also live on my Twitter, one of my 2 YouTube channels. We are live on Facebook as well. And then I had a couple other people doing tests on either their Facebook or their Twitter, different platforms. And it does look like Restream allows those pairs to be on multiple people's Facebook or LinkedIn, Twitch, Twitter, whatever the social channel of your choice is. The other thing that we discovered is that it doesn't tell me which channel the questions are coming from. So I can see that a question came from LinkedIn or Facebook or which social network, but I can't necessarily tell whose profile it came from. So some of the follow-up may be a little challenging for us as we look at that. But thank you so much for attending, and have a great rest of your afternoon, evening. Casey, thank you for that conference. I believe that's up in, it's in Austin, Texas. I believe that conference might be the one that alternates between Wisconsin and Austin, that some folks I used to work with at Microsoft made me aware of. I have never been, so I need to put that on my to-do list to attend. But thank you, Casey. And if no one, I should say, has anything additional to add, I'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting. Yeah, Joseph, I would agree. Everybody did a wonderful job. And thank you to all our presenters this evening. Excellent.
Thanks.
I'm going to go ahead.
Thanks,
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and end our stream.
Thank you. Have a good
Thank
evening.
you.
Thanks. Have a good weekend.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Thanks for
All right,
joining.
bye-bye.
Bye.
So it should be 6 through 6.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.